Okay, good afternoon. All right, I was tagged in a video about the apparent contradiction between Matthew and Luke in the genealogy of Jesus. Okay, so I'm going to do my best to explain what I think the issues are. So the video I was tagged in went into like an apologetic about why it's not a contradiction. And I'm willing to grant that it might not be, but I still have problems with the reasoning. All right, so let's get into it. A couple people have suggested it could be that one of the fathers of Joseph, and by the way, we're talking about Matthew 1:16 and Luke 3:23. They both list the genealogy of Jesus, but they have different men listed as the father of Joseph. And they have different names all throughout it. So a common apologetic is that one side traces the royal line of succession from David down to Jesus, which there's problems there because in that line, Matthew omits multiple people in the actual history. I think from 2 Kings, might be Chronicles, I'm not entirely sure, but you could look that up yourself. So he omits a few people, and it traces through a king who was cursed. I think it was Jehoiakim. Don't quote me on that. Again, you can look this up yourself. So then that traces down to Joseph, who is the stepfather of Jesus. My question about that is like, Joseph supposedly didn't have anything to do with Jesus' birth, so why are we tracing Jesus' royal lineage through a guy who had nothing to do with him? Like, he was just a stepfather. You could get into like adoption stuff and whatever, but that's fine. Then the other side, the other genealogy is supposed to reflect Jesus's Levitical or priestly lineage, and that's fine. I definitely agree that the gospel writers were choosing to do things for theological reasons. I just have a problem with the idea that it's 100% true. So let me pause here for a second. I remember where I was going. I lost my train of thought for a second. Then the other common argument is one side, one genealogy traces Joseph's lineage, and then the other side traces Mary's. Problem is, they both say Joseph, and the people will argue like, well, there's not like a specific term for son-in-law, and you wouldn't have traced females anyway because men were the heads of the household, so he would have traced through Joseph no matter what. Maybe that's true, but again, if Joseph is so not involved in the birth of Jesus and Mary is super important, you would think that these guys would say, if it was the case that it was like Mary's line and Heli was Joseph's father-in-law, you think that they would be able to say, okay, so Melchi was the father of Joseph, or the father of Mary, who was married to Joseph, and Joseph was his son by law, or something like that. There's definitely ways you could do it without saying son-in-law. You could make it clear in the text, and they don't. They just say that Joseph was the son of Melchi, or Heli, excuse me. So I don't think the argument that it's Mary's lineage holds up very well. I'm going to pause here again, and then I will get to what I think is the strongest argument, but then we'll talk about why I still have problems with that one. So I think the very strongest argument for this to resolve this contradiction is from two guys. It's from the guy who's like known as the father of church history. His name is Eusebius. He wrote his histories of the church in, I think, 324 CE. So he talks about this specific issue, and I'm going to link the like a actual quote from his histories in the comments here. So go ahead and read it. It's a little bit tricky because it's like, you know, the way they talk back then. It's all a bunch of these and thous, and it's the same thing if you try to read like the Federalist Papers or something. It's kind of difficult. You might have to read it a few times to get it, but it's good. It's a good resource. But the thing is, Eusebius was quoting a guy named Sextus Julius Africanus. He was an early Christian historian and traveler who wrote about this contradiction and gives you a way to resolve it. And basically what he's saying is he uses like Deuteronomy laws about brothers marrying their brother's widow. So if like I died and I didn't have any children, then my brother could marry my widow, and the first child that they had together would technically be mine by law in Deuteronomy. So, and there's also no law against a widow marrying another man from a different family, if that's what if there's no other brother or something like that. So, the way that Africanus resolves this contradiction is he says that the grandfathers of Joseph, that's where the lines like goes together. Like, so there was one guy, he married a woman and had Jacob, which is the father of Joseph listed in Matthew. Then that guy died. So then the mother of Jacob married another guy. His name was Melchi. He and this woman, they had a child named Heli. So that's where we get Jacob and Heli. So these guys, so the two different genealogies coming down to Mathan and Melchi, they both had a child with the same woman. That was Jacob. Those children were Jacob and Heli. Now, then it gets a little more complicated. Jacob dies childless. So then Heli marries his widow and has Joseph. So in Matthew, it lists Joseph as the son of Jacob, but he's biologically the son of Heli, but by law the son of Jacob, or the other way around. I can't remember if that's the way it is or not. So this is a good way to resolve it. Problem is, there is no evidence for it. In Africanus, he says he got this information from the distant descendants of Jesus. But like, think about it. Like, can you tell like details about your great grandfathers? I can't. I don't even know their names. Like, so it's a way to resolve it, but it hinges on just believing this specific account that doesn't have any evidence for it. And then you add on top of that Eusebius is not really recognized as a reliable historian. He might have made up this entire thing. He said in the thing, he says this is from a letter that Africanus wrote to some guy who died 100 years before it. So like, this is all like kind of broken down in this link. So that's kind of my take on it. I hope that makes sense. Ultimately, it doesn't matter to me if it's a contradiction or not, because I think all of the stuff is impossible to prove. And this stuff should be more clear if it's supposed to be important for my soul. Let me know what you think.